Ordinary hamburger meat now averages $6.75 a pound, the highest price plain ground beef has ever carried in this country. Even at that price, it might hit your pan and weep gray liquid instead of searing, while the same shelf, same price package browns perfectly. Nothing on either label explains why. Until 6 months ago, nothing had to. Since January 1st, 2026, a new federal rule has quietly made one of the oldest tricks on a meat label illegal, and most grocery chains are counting on shoppers never noticing, so we put that to the test. Ground beef from 11 chains, Walmart, Costco, Target, and 8 more, scored against the same 3-question standard. 8 failed or earned a warning. Only 3 came out clean, and every claim ahead is backed by settlement records, federal filings, and one company's own $250 million admission. Failing grade, tied for 8th and 7th place, Dollar General Market and Meijer. If you've always had a nagging suspicion about the cheapest ground beef on the shelf, that instinct wasn't wrong. Most supermarket ground beef is never actually ground near the store selling it. It arrives already sealed from a centralized case-ready plant, hauled hundreds of miles, and shelved by staff who may never handle raw meat. One plant supplies an entire region at rock-bottom cost, and every tray looks identical. On paper, that's a logistics triumph. In your kitchen, it's a gamble. Part of the gamble is built into the packaging. Modified atmosphere trays hold that bright cherry red color for 10 to 14 days, while standard butcher paper starts dulling within 3 to 7, roughly when your pan starts flooding. Federal food safety guidance explains why. Once meat has been frozen at any stage of its journey, ice crystals tear open the muscle fibers, and everything they held rushes out the second heat hits it. That gray puddle isn't user error, it's a receipt for how far and how frozen the meat traveled. Quick verdicts on the bottom too. Dollar General Market answers 0 of our 3 questions. No proof of U.S. origin, no named cut, no indication of where or when it was ground. Nobody expects a butcher counter at a dollar store, so this reads as absence of information rather than betrayal. Meijer is more uncomfortable, a full-size Midwestern supercenter advertising daily fresh-cut meat, scoring that same 0 out of 3, despite decades more brand equity. To be fair, both are federally inspected and honestly priced. What comes next hides a lot more. From the single largest traditional grocery chain in the country, failing grade, 6th place, Kroger. For a huge share of American households, Kroger isn't a grocery store. It's simply where you shop. Kroger was an early, enthusiastic adopter of the case-ready model. Cargill's meat division built a dedicated processing plant outside Atlanta decades ago with one client in mind. That plant handled the cutting, grinding, packaging, and pricing of Kroger's private label meat before it ever reached a shelf. A company representative explained the logic at the time. Kroger wanted employees selling meat, not cutting it. Once the grinder left the back room, much of the industry copied the move. That plant had a rough early test. Roughly 190,000 pounds of ground beef pulled back after an illness outbreak tied to Kroger stores in Georgia. Kroger's own website today reads like a lineup of familiar names, private label beside tubes, stamped JBS and Tyson. Then there's the flagship item, organic, grass-fed ground beef, under the greenest label in the case. Kroger's own site discloses those animals were born, raised, and processed in Uruguay, an ocean from any American pasture, buried on a blog post, rather than the package itself, which also lists a 23-day shelf life. Keep that number in mind. 1 point of real credit. Kroger was among the first major chains to voluntarily drop carbon monoxide meat packaging back in 2006, well ahead of competitors. The company clearly knows how to set a standard. It just set this one in the wrong direction. Failing grade, 5th place, Food Lion. In February 2024, a press release most people scrolled past revealed that Cargill, one of the largest meat producers on the planet, had bought 2 case-ready plants directly from Food Lion's parent company. Plants already supplying Food Lion's house brand beef. It isn't only Food Lion. Giant Food, Hannaford, and Stop and Shop all draw from the same pipeline. 4 storefronts, 4 logos, 4 senses of neighborhood loyalty, 1 processing source. You could drive the East Coast, shop at what feel like unrelated chains, and still buy beef from the same facility. Cargill's leadership described the appeal in writing. Store staff would spend less time handling meat and back. The new pipeline owner publicly announced that nobody preps your beef in-house anymore and called it an improvement. If several store brands fill from one pipe, what are you really choosing between at the shelf? Mostly the logo. Cargill has since settled allegations of helping push beef prices higher nationwide, agreeing to a $32.5 million payout, disputing wrongdoing, with no court finding it broke the law. Still, when the company packaging your dinner is cutting 9-figure settlement checks while your grocery bill climbs, some skepticism seems fair. To Food Lion's credit, what's in the tray is consistent and properly inspected. The label just never mentions the pipeline exists. The next chain keeps its supply chain locked up tighter still. Failing grade, 4th place. Aldi. Here's what's strange. Aldi's ground beef is often genuinely good. Browns well, costs less than almost anywhere, and the value is real, which is exactly what makes the lack of transparency so frustrating. There's no meat department, no butcher, no public list of suppliers. Sourcing quietly rotates by region, and labeling stays generic enough to survive it. Ask Aldi where a package came from, and the honest answer is, it varies, and we'd rather not say. A good result at the stove is luck. A watery one is also luck, and there's no way to know why, except once. In 2018, a Cargill facility in Colorado shipped ground beef tainted with E. coli, over 132,000 pounds. Recalled. Illnesses in 4 states. 1 fatality. Investigators traced the contamination through grocery chains across the Midwest, Aldi included. The one moment the public got real visibility into that closed supply chain. It wasn't a brochure, it was a recall notice. In fairness, that was years ago, and Aldi's everyday value remains real. Cheap and low quality aren't the same thing. Still, a chain feeding this many weekly beef purchases owes shoppers more than a shrug about origin. The next chain borrowed credibility it never earned. Failing grade, 3rd place. Target. People trust Target with their kids' clothing, their prescriptions, half their holiday list. Reputation that took years to build, which is why it carries weight the moment it's stretched somewhere it doesn't belong. Toss ground beef into a Target cart, and it's natural to assume the meat got the same care as everything else. It didn't. Target's grocery section reads like an afterthought bolted onto a general retailer, and the meat aisle proves it. No in-house meat cutter anywhere in the chain. Packages pre-made elsewhere. Thin selection, slower turnover, prices that rarely undercut a real grocer. This is a company built around moving boxes, and its meat department reflects that. Target shows up in that same 2018 recall record too. Nationwide. Not one region. Same anonymous supply line as the discount chains under tidier lighting. Fair enough. Target never claimed to run a butcher counter. So why is the beef priced like one? Paying extra for ambiance is still paying extra, and ambiance never made beef brown better. To its credit, Target's cold chain logistics are genuinely tight, an impressively organized way to sell a complete unknown. That gray puddle you've blamed on your stove, at a store with no grinder for 100 miles, that's the supply chain showing its hand. Target, at least, never staged an actor to sell the illusion. The next chain did. Failing grade, 2nd place. Safeway. Watch the butcher behind the Safeway counter, and you'll see genuine skill. Order a ribeye, and he'll hand you something legitimately impressive. Safeway's own advertising celebrates that employee, and he's earned it. Now look at the store brand tray in your cart. The signature select package you came for. That butcher never touched it. It arrived sealed from a plant days earlier, possibly from another state. Shelved beside his counter, the way a prop borrows legitimacy from a movie set. Some shoppers have even filmed the punchline. Identical product priced higher at the full-service counter than in the pre-packaged aisle a few feet away. Same beef? Different. Costume. Different price. The premium wasn't for the meat, it was for the theater. This chain has history dressing up its meat case. Congress once questioned Safeway over carbon monoxide packaging, keeping meat rosy longer than it should look. The industry mostly dropped that gas, but the instinct, make it look fresher than it is, outlasted the chemical. To be clear, the talent behind that counter is real, and here's the twist. Ask that same butcher to grind you a chuck roast on the spot. He'll do it. Today's date attached. and you'll walk out with some of the best beef in this ranking, from a chain otherwise on the avoid list. The costume only fools people who never talk to him. That covers the theatrics. Before getting to the single worst offender, it's worth pausing on the evidence tying this whole industry together, because the next few minutes are really the entire point of this investigation. 4 companies, Tyson, Cargill, JBS, and National Beef, process roughly 85% of all cattle raised in this country, which means shopping 5 different stores in a single week for 5 different beef brands still very likely funnels through one of those same 4 processors. That isn't real competition, that's a dinner table set for 4, and shoppers were never actually handed a seat at it. A major antitrust lawsuit accused those same 4 companies of quietly coordinating to limit supply and push prices upward. Every one of them denies it, and no court has yet ruled against them. But here's the documented part. 3 of the 4 have already paid out settlements, exceeding $200 million combined. Cargill among them, the very same Cargill, now running Food Lion's supply pipeline. $200 million changing hands from companies that insist nothing improper ever happened. Meanwhile, the math at the register kept moving. A pound that cost roughly $4 9 years ago now approaches $7, and the national cattle herd has shrunk to its smallest size in 75 years. Fewer cattle, fewer processors, one costlier skillet, one more piece of evidence. And this one reads almost like a confession. Walmart recently put roughly $250 million into constructing its own dedicated beef processing facility, sourced from ranches close enough that the origin can genuinely be checked. Hold that fact. It becomes important in a moment. And finally, the regulation itself. Since January 1st, 2026, the label phrase, "Product of USA," legally requires that the animal was born, raised, slaughtered, and processed entirely on American soil, with documentation the government can request at any time. For years before that, imported beef could earn the same label after nothing more than a brief stop inside U.S. borders. That loophole is now closed, though almost nobody shopping the meat aisle realizes the wording changed meaning just 6 months ago. Naturally, that raises a question worth sitting with. Given a real change in the law, why hasn't the actual meat case changed at all? Because the regulation only controls what a company decides to print. It has nothing to say about what a company simply omits. Staying silent still isn't a violation, which brings this ranking to its worst offender, a company that proved unmistakably that honest labeling is achievable and then decided exactly who deserved to see it. Failing grade. First place, Walmart. In June 2025, Walmart held a ribbon cutting for that new processing facility and said the quiet part on record. The plant, executives announced, would deliver more consistency, more transparency, and more value for shoppers. A $257 million price tag, with cattle traceable back to ranches no farther than 250 miles from the facility, the kind of supply chain visibility that would make most independent butcher shops jealous. Built by the largest retailer on the planet, it demonstrates something the industry insisted for decades couldn't be done at scale. Full traceability is achievable whenever a company actually wants it. Now, walk into a typical Walmart meat aisle. That flagship facility supplies roughly 600 stores across the Midwest. Walmart runs more than 4,500 locations nationwide, and buried deep in the coverage of that grand opening, the plant handles premium Angus cuts, steaks and roasts, the expensive end of the case, the plain tube of ground beef, the single item more American households cook than any other, isn't part of that program. Anywhere in the country's largest beef retailer built a $250 million showcase of transparency aimed at exclusively at one regional premium slice of its business and left the everyday product on the exact same untraceable supply chain as always. The reasoning becomes obvious once you frame it correctly. Transparency here is being marketed as a luxury upgrade, not a baseline expectation. The traceable steak is the billboard. The anonymous tube is where the real volume moves. Shoppers willing to pay more get real provenance. Everyone else gets a shrug and plastic wrap. One group gets a ribbon cutting with elected officials in attendance. The other gets a label that still fails all 3 of our questions. Ordinary customers effectively helped fund that monument to transparency without ever being invited inside it. To give credit where it's genuinely due, for shoppers in that Midwest region, and for the American ranchers already squeezed by exactly the kind of industry consolidation described above, that new plant represents a real, tangible improvement, and Walmart deserves recognition for building it. But a company that has already proven it can trace a stake back nearly to the ranch has no remaining excuse for a ground beef label that discloses absolutely nothing. This isn't a case of Walmart failing the test by accident. It's a company that aced the test selectively, only for shoppers willing to pay a premium for the privilege. That gap between what Walmart has shown it's capable of and what it actually delivers to everyone else is exactly why it lands at the bottom of this ranking. Here's how to protect yourself the next time you're standing in front of the meat case. Run the same 3-question check on whatever's currently in your own refrigerator. First, is the phrase "product of USA" actually printed on the package? Under the new rule, that phrase now carries genuine legal consequences: born, raised, slaughtered, and processed domestically, with paperwork on file if regulators come asking. A company willing to print that claim has actually done the compliance work behind it. Second, is there a named cut listed: chuck, sirloin, round, or does the label just say ground beef and stop there? Naming the cut means someone's willing to disclose exactly what went into the grinder. Leaving it out is its own quiet signal. Third, does the package say where and when the beef was actually ground? Ideally, in that specific store with an actual date attached. The word fresh has zero legal meaning on a meat label. A printed date does. Answer all 3 questions, and there's nothing left to hide. Answer none of them, and in a way, everything's already been said. There's also a simple test you can run at home yourself. Weigh out equal portions from 2 different packages on a kitchen scale. Cook them identically in the same pan, then weigh what remains afterward. Some shrinkage is completely normal. Rendered fat and evaporated moisture account for a portion of any loss, and leaner or fattier grinds will naturally differ slightly. What matters is the size of the gap between the 2 samples. When 1 pound sears cleanly and the other floods the pan, that difference is essentially physical evidence of how that beef was processed and how far and how frozen it traveled before reaching your kitchen. And regardless of what's actually in the package, good technique goes a long way toward rescuing even the most anonymous cut. Pat the meat completely dry before it touches the pan. Get the surface hotter than feels intuitive. Work in a single layer, splitting it into batches if needed, since overcrowding is exactly how you end up with that gray, steamed texture. Then leave it undisturbed for a couple of full minutes, so an actual crust can form before you break it apart. Dry meat, a properly hot pan, and patience will improve results across every single chain on this list, because browning was never really about price. It's always been about moisture control, and now you're the one in charge of it. Ranked best to worst. A butcher grinding a named cut in front of you. Beef ground in store with a printed date. A package labeled "Product of USA" with a named cut, and last, an anonymous tube with none of it. Now, the good news: 3 chains actually passed this test, starting with one whose meat counter puts most of the industry to shame. Passing grade, 3rd place, Publix. Publix earns its spot through old-fashioned effort. There's a genuine, functioning meat department in every store, doing real work daily. The house ground beef in that case is actually ground on site from trimmed cuts, operating under a strict freshness window. Staff have described a system where every cut is tracked, and anything approaching its expiration gets pulled rather than ground, and sold regardless. Grind on Tuesday, sold out by Thursday. The printed sell-by date means what it claims to mean. Compare that to Kroger's 23-day window. Publix's entire in-house grind lives and dies within 2 days. Ask an employee behind the counter what actually went into today's batch, and you'll get a real answer, because unlike most chains on this list, someone in that building genuinely knows. That's what a passing grade actually looks like: a named cut, an identifiable grinder, a trustworthy date, and an actual person who can vouch for all of it. The meat performs accordingly in the pan too. Cleaner browning, firmer texture, far fewer surprises. Beef with a short, transparent history simply behaves better under heat. One honest caveat though, before getting too impressed, sitting right next to that house-ground product are case-ready tubes supplied by JBS, the same company implicated in those earlier settlements. And during that same 2018 outbreak, Florida illnesses were specifically traced to ground beef purchased at Publix locations. The in-store grind and the sealed commercial tube sit inches apart with similar price tags, but they are not remotely the same product. Read every label carefully, even here, especially here, since this is the one chain where the transparent choice and the untraceable one sit on the very same shelf, and only one of them has actually earned the trust shopper's place in it. Is Publix always the cheapest option available? No, but the extra dollar here buys real accountability. At most other chains on this list, that same extra dollar just buys nicer store lighting. Passing grade. Second place, Whole Foods. Here's a claim almost no other national grocery chain can make. Ground beef purchased at a Whole Foods meat counter reportedly comes from a single animal per package. It arrives pre-ground once, gets a fresh secondary grind in-store, and then goes straight into the case. One animal, one package, genuinely rare in an industry where a single pound of commercial ground beef routinely blends trimmings from dozens of different cattle, which is exactly why tracing origin becomes essentially impossible at most other stores. Whole Foods, by comparison, can point to the actual animal layered on top of its own welfare-based sourcing tiers, displayed right in the case, backed by more than 100 documented animal welfare standards, with an ingredient panel that reads simply, beef. That's about as traceable as commercial ground beef gets anywhere in the country. Now, the honest counterpoint, sourced from an actual federal notice rather than online chatter. In June 2025, a pre-packaged organic product sold nationwide at Whole Foods, an 85% lean organic option, shipped already contaminated with a dangerous E. coli strain. The government alert only went public after the product had largely already sold out, and no formal recall was even issued, since there was essentially nothing left on shelves to pull. That reputation for careful sourcing at the fresh counter doesn't automatically extend to every sealed package sitting nearby, regardless of how organic the branding looks. Same lesson as Publix, at roughly triple the cost. Why this lands second rather than first, along with a footprint that skips entire regions. When the premium option costs double and the nearest store is 40 minutes away, a gold standard chain you can't reach on a Tuesday isn't the realistic winner for a family cooking beef twice a week. That's not a quality failure, it's an access problem. And access problems don't put food on the table. Passing grade. First place, Costco. The warehouse chain takes the top spot, and it earns that ranking right at the meat counter. Costco employees have described the actual daily routine themselves. Unsold steaks from the previous day get run through the grinder first thing each morning. One worker put it simply, leftover steaks have to be ground and sold by early afternoon at the latest. In the days following Thanksgiving and Christmas, when unsold rib roasts stop selling, those get ground into the mix too. On the right day, the ground beef in that case may have started life as somebody's unsold holiday centerpiece, and shopping early in the day improves your odds of catching it. There's also a move most Costco members never think to try. Ask the meat counter specifically for the chub, a 10-pound bulk tube kept in back, never displayed publicly, typically 92 to 96% lean, and usually priced well below the pre-packaged trays out front. One customer this year reported paying $3.29 a pound for a 90-10 blend, roughly half of what most competing grocery chains charge for an identical lean ratio. Split it into freezer portions the same day you buy it, and you've effectively cut your monthly beef spending nearly in half without giving up any quality. Combine that with genuinely competitive bulk pricing, disciplined inventory turnover, and a famously generous return policy, and this adds up to the most complete offering in this entire investigation. That said, a first-place ranking doesn't mean flawless. The large, prepackaged Kirkland trays remain a commercial product, with sourcing that can span the US, Canada, and occasionally beyond. The genuine praise here belongs specifically to the fresh meat counter, not automatically to every package sitting in the surrounding cold case. Know exactly which one you're actually grabbing before checkout. The counter and the packaged aisle function almost like two separate operations, sharing one storefront, and only one of them ground anything fresh that same morning. On pure sourcing transparency alone, Whole Foods genuinely wins, and that deserves saying plainly. But on labeling honesty, price, and how realistically an average family can shop there week after week, Costco takes the overall title. The meat industry spent roughly 4 decades perfecting labels that reveal almost nothing. 6 months ago, a new rule finally made that silence carry consequences, and outright lying became illegal. Now you're holding a simple test that separates one from the other. 3 questions. Any package, any store. A ranking goes out of date. A test you can run yourself in 30 seconds never will. If this changed how you'll look at the meat case, sharing it helps other families avoid paying premium prices for a total unknown. Drop a comment. Which chain kept you fooled the longest? The apron, the membership, the red cart, or the small town branding? Pass this along to whoever picked up one of these trays this week without knowing what those 4 words now mean.